He's like, wait, no, you're too far back. Yeah. Cool. All right, well, we may have a few people that drift in here as we get going, but I'm going to go ahead and get this evening started. Good evening and welcome to our public informational meeting for the WCA Building Bond Referendum. I'm Board Chair Michelle Nussman. I have a couple of other board members here with me tonight, Sarah Strunk and Darren Gross. We also have Brian Berg and Tony Wolf from Zerberg Architects, and we have Steve Gertz from Gertz Construction Services, and then Superintendent will be with us tonight. Our moderator for questions tonight is going to be Deb Hangle, who will be assisted by Gail Hedstrom. We thank both of them for being here tonight, helping us coordinate an efficient meeting so we can get to as many questions as possible. Audience members have been given cards, hopefully as you come in. If not, if you raise your hand, either board member will be able to get you a card, or if you use up the one that you want us to collect it, you can just stick your hand up. A couple of things about the cards as you ask questions tonight. If you know which ballot question your question refers to, it would be super helpful to put that at the top of your card. Question 1, question 2, or question 3. If you don't know, don't worry about it. And then if you can keep one question per card, they can try to sort all the questions so that they can put questions that are related to each other together or that are similar questions so they don't duplicate asking questions as we go. So, as we get going tonight, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. We've had 3 different phases, really. The first one starting back in May of this year. November of last year was the election where we put a single-site option on the ballot. And the board took a little bit of time after that election to kind of gather our thoughts, do some other board work that needed to be done, and then started to revisit facilities, knowing that we still had some challenges with our current structures across the district that needed to be addressed. So one of the very first things that we did, besides discussing as a board that we wanted to revisit multiple different options that we had previously considered, was pulling together a community group for public input. And this group consisted of various people from all 5 of our communities, from people that were part of civic organizations like fire departments or Lions Club, to people that were on city councils, to people that were farmers within our district or business owners, and tried to create a pretty eclectic group of individuals. The primary purpose of that community meeting that we held back in May was to really listen as a board and gather feedback and say, okay, tell us where we should go next. And we talked about the different ballot questions and got feedback, not just on the facility options, but also looking at the other questions that are back on the ballot this year related to question 2 and question 3 that we'll talk a little bit more tonight. And gathered feedback about, what elementary structure they'd like to see, ultimately what they think would be the best for our district, and kind of combined all of that information, went back to the board table again. Okay. From there, we also had a meeting with administration, with faculty, with staff. We pulled in elementary building principal, the dean of students for the elementary level, the high school principal, special education teachers, teachers from all 3 buildings, the board members, representatives from construction and engineering, and really talked comprehensively about what's an adequate amount of space. Something that was communicated very clearly to us was, build what you need. And us not being the experts and not working in the building every day, we went directly to the staff saying, what is it that's needed? So we went literally room by room in both footprints for North Elementary and South Elementary and really identified what spaces were needed, what spaces did the staff feel were really important to the floor plan. And as an example, South square footage decreased from about a 75,000 square foot plan to 58,000 square feet. And North Elementary, as we talked through that tonight, is a 68,000 square foot plan. One of the questions that we asked at the community meeting that I was mentioning just a few minutes ago was, do you feel like we need to have the same equivalent space in the buildings at North and South? And the answer that came back resoundingly was, no, we understand that at South there's less enrollment from a student standpoint, so build the program at North that you need and build the program at South that you need. Okay? So, as we got into phase 2, what we did as a board is really went back to looking at the data points we previously looked at, but also a few additional data points that we're going to look at tonight and share with you. One of those being where our student population is, and then identifying different places where on the south side, a elementary school could be located, what we wanted to do with the north building, what infrastructure was solid and and sound here, what could be renovated, and what we needed to add on beyond that. Okay? As we got to July, we refined the plan, we developed materials for the review and comment, and the board, 7-0, yes, in support of the options that you see on the ballot, decided to propose a plan to the community that included building a new South Elementary in Hoffman, adding on and renovating North Elementary, making some enhancements and some additions at the secondary school, and addressing sports facilities, which we'll talk about as we get further in tonight. Okay. August was where we submitted the review and comment to Minnesota Department of Education. We prepared for these educational and informational meetings that we're holding, scheduled them, and the board officially passed the resolution placing the questions that you're going to see on the November ballot. As we got into phase 3, we had our very first community meeting in Hoffman last night. Elbow Lake is our second of 5. We have Kensington next week, and we'll finish off with Barrett and Wendell the week following. I would encourage you, if this was a lot of information to take in, and you're just starting to follow these conversations, you're welcome to attend any community meetings that are still upcoming if you'd like to get more information. Our website also has a ton of valuable information on it. It's got an informational video. One of the things that even me as a school board member found really helpful was watching Mr. Hoagie walk through at the secondary school and point to different things and really help envision what it would look like as we talk about things like question 2. Okay. So, as we talk about the ballot questions, and we'll spend a little bit more time here as we get to the end of the meeting tonight. But there are a couple things that I wanted to point out. One of those being that this year we're doing mail-in ballots. It's not a typical election year. There's not a presidential election or anything that would drive voters to their polling places. And so we as a board had some discussion about, do we have a central polling place? Do we have voters go to all the different communities? Do we do mail-in ballots? Coming out of COVID, and then just me personally, having received some feedback when it was a non-election year, and that year in particular, the previous polling place was in Barrett, and for some individuals it was difficult to get there. So what we did was mail-in ballots, and what that really offers the opportunity is for every single person within our district to have a voice. The other thing beyond mail-in ballots that we did is we presented 3 separate questions. We understand that different people are passionate about different things. So if sports is a passion of yours, but you're not really sure about investing in programming and things that we talk about today, you have the ability to look at all 3 questions individually. One is not contingent on another. You can vote yes to 1, you can vote yes to 2, you can vote yes to all 3, you can vote no, but you really have an opportunity to look at those 3 questions separately and exclusively. Okay, so I'm going to welcome Brian and Tony up here for a couple minutes to kind of go with this next.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Brian Berg with Zerberg Architects, and just I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the process looks like and some of the overarching goals that we have for the project. As we went through the process of evaluating the overall approach for this referendum after the single site vote was voted down last time, there were some overarching goals that were part of that effort that came forward with this effort as well. And obviously, when you're using an existing building like this as part of the infrastructure that's going to go forward with a 2-site option, updating building systems and infrastructure in the portion of the building here that's going to remain is really important. Making sure that we have heating and cooling systems that are functional and work well, and making sure that we're positioning the district for being able to operate these buildings into the future is very important. And so the new construction and the existing construction on this site will obviously have that happen here. And then at the South Elementary School, the new site at Hoffman, we'll certainly be looking at upgrading systems from what the current situation is in the Kensington building. Providing enhancements to the building security and parking and access, those are all really important things. And when Tony talks about the plan for question 1, which is the question related to the 2 elementary schools, he'll talk specifically about those things. But we all know how important building security is, and we've seen the news. We know that building security can be an issue in small rural communities like this. Certainly it can be an issue in large urban communities, but we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect against a tragedy happening. And so providing a secure entry point into these buildings is really a critical part of the design process. Providing space for collaboration and active learning, and just the way that students learn is very different now than it was with the inclusion of technology in the classroom and the way that that's just pervasive in the classroom. We want to make sure that we're providing spaces that support that, spaces that support STEAM education. And Tony will mention that here in a little bit when we talk about the third site high school modifications and providing that STEAM room there. Active learning is certainly something that's happening in the classroom all the time. You have great teachers here in your district, and giving them the tools to be able to be flexible in the way that they provide curriculum to your students is a really important part of providing good quality academic space. And then finally, expanding and improving co-curricular spaces, things that are outside of the building, things like athletic fields. That's part of question 3, and we'll certainly get into that as we talk more about that portion of the project. Sarah's going to talk a little bit about the decision to place the South Elementary in Hoffman in just a minute here. And Michelle's going to talk about that. Okay. There are some demographic information that she's going to share with you that just talks about where students are located in proximity to these buildings, and I think that's really interesting. And so I think that just want to commend the board and administration here for the work that they've done to refocus and listen to the community input that was given following the previous referendum. The discussions that were had were really good discussions when we had the community meeting this past spring, and it was just really energizing to have the discussion that was in that room. There were a lot of people in that room, and there were a lot of community members, there were a lot of concerned citizens, there were people on both sides of the issue there, and I think it was just a really good positive discussion. And a lot of the impetus behind the changes in the whole overall plan here came from that meeting. And so the board has been responsive to that, and we're committed to making sure that the things that were discussed at that meeting and the things that have been brought forward as kind of key focus points for these projects are followed through with if the work is successful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and she can talk a little bit about the demographic information.
So as we went through and we identified options, one of the questions that was posed was where our student population is, and particularly when we were talking about building in South Elementary. A couple of themes that came out from the community meeting that we had in the spring were a desire to bring back the 5th grade to elementary level. This accomplished a couple of different things. We had some good discussions, and administrators were really good at steering us in the direction of understanding that there are some developmental differences between that 5th grade age and that 6th grade age. So bringing 5th grade back to the elementary was an overarching theme that came out as a result of those discussions. Another one that I think was really helpful in our decision was understanding how much parents valued, if they were available, to walk their kids to school. And so we started looking at where is our student population. This first map that you see is concentric circles that show within a 1-mile radius, a 7-mile radius, and a 10-mile radius of Elbow Lake and Kensington where our student population lies. So within 1 mile of Elbow Lake, there's 117 students. When we looked at Kensington, within 1 mile, there's 19 students. This is K through 5 existing data for the students that we have right now. This next chart shows you, when we move that concentric circle to Hoffman, what happens. So we went from 19 students in Kensington that were within 1 mile, or what could be walking distance, to 72 kids that were within 1 mile walking distance if an elementary school was located in Hoffman. As we started to explore this option a little bit more, a couple of other things came to light for us. Besides the fact that students could walk to school, and there was a larger number of them, even if half of those kids decide to walk to school, that changes things from a busing standpoint, obviously. Less kids that need to be bused. It also changes how we route, rather than having these shuttle-type structure with what we're doing between Hoffman and Kensington, but really creating that close proximity with the elementaries to the secondary school. So it also puts Hoffman, Barrett, and Elbow Lake at a 7-7-7 in structure. So with the paring down of the floor plan, really what that left us with itself, when we look at the floor plan in a little bit, was space for what we call one flex classroom. So typically at South Elementary, each grade level is 2 sections. So 2 teachers at each grade level that's teaching those kids. Every once in a while, we need to break a section into 3. It might be because we have a higher population of special ed kids in a particular age level, or it might be because we've had an influx of students coming into kindergarten, or we've taken a lot of open enrollment. So what that flex classroom does is when we need to break into 3 sections, we have a classroom available to do that. Now obviously, one flex classroom is not a lot of additional space. So we talked about what happens if enrollment keeps growing in our district. In the 6.5, almost 7 years that I've been on the board, enrollment's grown about 100 kids. So we've been growing consistently for several years now, and have good potential for that enrollment to continue growing over the years. So with that 7-7-7 structure that we were talking about, if we get into a situation where we've run out of classroom space, let's say at South Elementary, and we want to offer parents the opportunity that are between, say, Barrett and Hoffman, the ability to enroll their kids at North Elementary, we have that ability to do so with the 7-7-7 structure. Same goes for students that are between Elbow Lake and Barrett. If parents want to consider enrolling their child into South Elementary, 7 miles to Hoffman from Barrett. So those were a couple of things that came up that ultimately led us to our decision. One of the other things that we took into consideration was the amount of time and resources financially that it would take with all of the different options that we considered for where we could build. And so, the one thing about the spot in Hoffman, if you haven't been by there, if you haven't seen it, it's very flat. There's not a lot of development that needs to go in there at all for being able to put a structure there. And also, the city of Hoffman has already had water and sewer run. So you're able to put a facility in that town without burden beyond the bond to the taxpayers that live there. So I'm going to pass things over to Tony. He's going to talk a little bit about what the elementary schools look like and get us into the secondary school and what some of those spaces look like.
Thanks, Cal. So ballot question number 1, as we were talking previously, there's 2 schools obviously to that, North Elementary and South Elementary. North Elementary is a renovation of 41,000 square feet, which is essentially the gym and the surrounding spaces with this addition to the existing school. And then new construction of about 25,000 square feet. So that's about 60% of the building is renovated, existing, that we're reusing, and about 40% of the building will be new construction for a total of about 65,000 square feet. The South Elementary is a new building in Hoffman, as we've been discussing. So kind of bringing it back to what Brian was talking about with some of the goals and how we achieve those. Both of these buildings will be, building improvements will be student-centered with new flexible learning classes and with the for active learning and collaboration and utilizing spaces and technology that supports current curriculum for academics. It also centralizes the instructional support services and improves the security of the building with new parking and entrances. Also improving the efficiency and operating costs for the building with new mechanical systems. So the plan here, again, as I stated, the red, brown in the middle here, that's all renovated space. Your blue is your additions. On the south side of the building here, we have a bus drop-off off the street. Right now they drop off on the curbside. This will have a separate bus drop-off with staff parking, which separates it from the apparent drop-off and parking area and visitor parking. Our main entrance is a secure vestibule right adjacent to the administrative offices. The central commons area acts as not only your kind of introduction to the school, but also your kitchen area and also the the streets. It's right off the gym, has nice proximity off the gym for any after-school activities. So as you go around the building, many of the spaces around the backs of the building are similar to what they are today. The pre-K through kindergarten spaces are a little larger classrooms, so they're ideal for that. You have the head start rooms that we're having up in the front because they're currently located in a portion where the new kitchen and cafeteria commons will be located. The media center is actually going to get split, and half of it will be the media center still, and half of it will be the music classroom. As we come over to the east side of the building, we have two wings with first and second off of the south wing, and then third through fifth grade on the north wing, along with a couple of or actually just one extra flex classroom in this plan. And then also the STEAM room centrally located for all the students to come to for those activities. And then again, some of your core special education, those sorts of things located in the center of the building. These are just a couple of images of what the building could look like. It gives you an idea of massing and kind of the feel of what we're envisioning here. This is your main entrance as you're coming off of the parent drop-off. Your administrative office off to the side. So you have a lot of windows in there, administration sitting in there, giving some passive and active security. So people get the feeling that they could be being watched as they're coming up to the front of the building. And you kind of go around the side of the building over here. The commons area is located right there with the academic wings coming out of the foreground here. And if you look at this overall photo, this dark roof is the existing building, so it kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at there. As we move to the South Elementary School, we kind of similar theme. You'll notice we have the separate bus drop-off, the parent drop-off with the visitor parking, separating bus and vehicular traffic. We have a central commons area with the vestibule, secure vestibule off of there, again going into the administrative offices. So when you come in there during the day, you go directly to the administrative offices to check in. Off to the east, we have the pre-K kindergarten Head Start classrooms, flex classroom on the north side there, and then your first through fourth and fifth down on the south side of that plan. Your media center, music, speech classrooms are all kind of centrally located in there, and the gymnasium is located again off of the common space to really give that common space a dual function for multiple times a day. Then we have two playgrounds, separate playgrounds, actually at both sites for pre-K and for the older students. Again, just some visual images of what this could look like. This is looking at your entrances right about there, and your student park or your visitor parking off to the side there. Your main entrance, if you approach it with the administrative offices off to the side, and then your common space looking out towards that. Ballot question number 2. So this is at the Barrett site for classroom and academic improvements. So there's 3 main additions to this. There's a STEAM edition, again for those collaborative learning environments, VOE, Automotive Industrial Tech edition, and the Student Fitness Center edition. And then there's also money allocated for new equipment for to support programs for family consumer sciences for the commercial kitchen and media center furnishings. As we look at the site here, these additions on the northwest side, with the VOE addition off the VOE area on the west side of the building, and the fitness center is located off the southeast corner of the gymnasium. There's also money in there to improve and refurbish the existing tennis courts, as well as provide additional parking, which is a little lacking at the existing school. Question number 3 on the ballot is for the athletic fields. So this would build 2 new baseball fields, 2 softball fields, and add parking, as well as a concession storage bathroom building out there. And then also to construct a track and field complex with all-weather track and some additional field beds. So as we look at the overall site here, we have the existing football field with the track and field events, the baseball, the baseball and softball complex off to the west side with a separate parking lot for them, and then taking those existing 2 baseball fields and converting them into practice fields. Dale, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Tony. I'm Dale Hockey, District Superintendent. And when we talk about building one referendums, one of the primary questions is how much is it going to cost me? So we have some slides we put together. The information on these slides comes from Baker Tilly, our financial advisor, and we broke them down with some assistance from Zerberg to indicate what the costs are for various property owners, whether it's residential, commercial, or ag, homestead and ag non-homestead. So when you look at this slide, we have the 3 ballot questions listed there. They're 1, 2, and 3. Question 1 is the elementary, and the projected cost on that is just over $37 million. The high school academic portion is at $4.87 million, and the athletic programs would be $5.495 or about $5.5 million. So when you look at that first rectangle up in the left-hand corner, it has the tax impact for a home valued at $100,000. So we use $100,000 not because it's an average, we use it because it's easy to multiply as you go up or go down. So you can make that conversion. So when you look at the question number 1, the cost annually for question number 1 on a $100,000 home is $134. And that works out to $11.17 a month for question 1. When you look at question 2, the academic portion, which is added to the building, that's $18 per month, or $18 per year and $1.50 per month. And the athletic programs is $20 annually and $1.67 per month for a person owning a $100,000 home. And the total then for questions 1, 2, and 3 is $172 increase in that fee for 20 years. It's a 20-year bond, and the cost then is $14.33 per month for a homeowner with that valuation. The rectangle in the upper right of this slide is for commercial property. And we used, it's the same 3 questions obviously, and we used a $100,000 valuation on the commercial property, again because it's easy to multiply. If your valuation is $300,000 or $500,000, it's easy to get a relatively good estimate of what that cost would be. So for question number 1, the annual cost for that commercial property is $281. And for question 2, it's $37, and for question 3, it's $41. So the same kind of philosophy as we work across the valuation. The tax impact for homestead property is a little different. It's not based on valuation of the property itself. It's based upon cost or valuation per acre. So we have a couple more slides to show that have valuations for ag property at $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So these slides are shown with a valuation of $6,000 per acre. And when we look at question 1 again, the cost per acre on that question for a ag homestead property is $2.25 per acre. When you look at the cost of question 2, the academic area, that cost is 30 cents per acre. And that's an annual cost. And then the cost of question 3 is $33 per acre. So that's the breakdown for ag homestead property. Now that doesn't include the portion which is determined to be residential. That's the house, the garage, and 1 acre valuation of $1 million. And that falls into the residential property. But it's the portion of that property that's actually the farm portion. And the last square, lower right-hand side, is the tax impact for non-homestead property. Again, it's based on 1 acre. And question number 1 would be $4.49 per acre. Question 2, 59 cents. Question 3, 66 cents. And a total of $5.74 per acre for questions 1, 2, and 3 combined. I did not mention that tax impact for ag homestead was $2.58 per acre annually.
Also on question 3, it was 33 cents, not $33.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm just saying.
Michelle corrected me, the cost per acre for that athletic program was 33 cents per acre, not $33. So. It's hard to get anything past their board numbers, so Amatose, thank you. Okay, the residential homestead, so this takes the same information but provides it in a more extended form. So the valuations for these homestead properties, we go at $75,000 and we go in some increments up to $500,000. So an individual wants to kind of focus in on their property valuation. If you have a property valuation of $200,000 on a residential homestead, that costs us $433 a year, or it will cost you 36 cents or $36 per month. And we did something similar then with the commercial properties. We used valuations beginning at $100,000 and went up to $5 million. So the valuations there I had shared $100,000 with you. Property valuation commercial at $500,000 is $2,215 annually, or $185 per month. If your valuation is $5 million on that commercial property, it is $23,767 annually, or close to $2,000 per month. And then the next slide is combined. It's got ag homestead and ag non-homestead. And on here we have the breakdown of valuations at $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000. So depending upon where you're at in our school district area, the valuations will fluctuate. So when you look at the $5,000 a month, the cost on homestead for questions 1, 2, and 3 is $2.39. Non-homestead, it's $4.78. And if your valuation is $7,000 per acre, the cost on homestead is $335 per acre and $661. And those projections are for questions 1, 2, and 3 combined.
I don't like using these things, but I'm going to talk about the ag to tax credit. So property taxes paying for schools was a disproportionate share of education funding on farmers, and especially in large rural districts like ours. In 2016, a bipartisan bill was introduced to alleviate some of that pressure. So the Ag to School credit provides tax relief for the farmers while providing rural schools with critical resources to fund their aging buildings. This is a big deal. In our district, our farmers typically are going to see this number here, no, this isn't working. I can't even work this thing, guys. Working? It won't work on here, we've done this before. So when you're looking at these numbers, and I went back one more slide too far here, hold on a second. So typically, this is without showing an ag tax credit applied. This is our bond costs. Farmers would typically pay this $34 million. This is 73.7% of that project is going to be paid by farmers without the ag tax credit. With the application of the ag to school tax credit, it is reduced from $34 million to $10 million. So the 51% or 51.2% savings in our project, it's going to vary based on your tax base. But for our school, our district, it's going to save the farmers 51.2%. So the savings that we see in this ag tax credit, it's 51% of our whole project, and that is all passed on to the farmers, which is huge. Like I said, because typically they take the burden of most of the tax in our district. So for me, the way I look at this, first of all, think about it. That's 51% of our price tag is being paid for by the state, not our district taxpayers. So when you look at these numbers, the difference between the 47 and you take off that 24, that means we're going to fund this project, and our district is only going to pay $23 million cost for this $47 million. So we're basically, it's half the price that the burden is going to be on our district taxpayers. Just to point out one thing, this slide here is not in the brochure. We had a little floop in there. That's not a good word, I don't know what to use, but yeah. The numbers in there, I'll show you where those numbers are. So the number you're going to see in there is this 46. So this is a after 20 years of interest number on question 1 alone. That's the only thing that got in the brochure. So just the information I wanted to share with you is whenever you're looking at this, look at the total, and 51% of that is paid by the state. So
20-year bond?
Yes. Yep. So this slide, which isn't in there, is telling you the cost with the 20 years, so you can see that, and it still comes out to be the 51.2%. So you look at they're going to pay 30 of the 58 with interest. So that's really all I need to say, and I'll just roll He's gonna come back up here.
Thank you, Sarah. When we went to the voters in a previous election, we talked about the advantages of going at that time. And one of them was the ag to school credit. And we're actually in a better position now because at that time we were looking at ag to school credit of 60% of that credit on a few of the years. And now we're at 60% for 1 year. And subsequent years, it's a 70% credit to our farmers on the tax base. So we're actually sitting in a better position now. The other thing we talked about was the interest rate, about how we're at historical lows, and we're still at that level. When you look at the red line on here, that's the area of the bond rate, the government obligation bonds. We're looking at a 20-year bond rate, and with this projection of from 8/19/21, the projection is 2.14%. Now, as you back up to the peak on that chart, to go back to the middle portion where it's the highest, it's above 4.5%. That was in November of 2018. You go all the way to the left one was in a similar place in a low point. It was back in August of 2016. So when you look at the tax rate over the years, we're still hanging in there at historically low rates. So if there's if the committee passes all or one of the questions and we go to sell bonds, those bonds will be sold probably in January, February, and that bond rate would be good for the 20 years of the bond. So another very significant financial advantage for the district. So the last thing we have is Michelle to come and wrap things up for us.
Thank you, Dan. So, pop quiz, instead of me doing all the talking. Anybody know? So our newest building in the district is 25 years old. Anybody know what the interest rate was when we bonded that project 25 years ago? I actually just learned this. Besides you.
Over 6%.
Over 6%. So when we talk about the interest rate that we're talking about now, 25 years ago, it was 3 times that. So it really is, it's a big deal when we talk about the interest rate. So talking a little bit more, going back to talking about the ballots, you have the 3 separate questions, as I had indicated at the beginning of the meeting. Question 1 addresses the 2 elementary schools. Question 2 addresses the programming at the secondary school. Question 3 addresses our athletic fields at the secondary school. Ballots will be mailed out to voters no later than October 14th. Election day is November 2nd, so your ballots need to be back by then. It's important that you verify that your online voter registration address is correct. You can do that with the URL that's listed here through the state of Minnesota and their elections voter registration website. Name and addresses from the state database are what are used for the mailing of the ballots to go out. If you have mail election questions regarding the mail-in ballots, we also have contact information here, or you can send an email address to coachs@isd2342.org. Okay? In addition to any questions that are asked here tonight, if you leave the meeting and you have additional questions that come to mind, you can email questions@isd2342.org at any point in time. And if you don't remember that, or you don't have a pen, if you watch any of the school board meetings, I always start with that announcement. So the email address is there if you're not sure where to send questions to. That concludes the presentation part of tonight, and so what we're going to do is move into some question and answer. Yes?
I just want to correct you because I think you got information. So it was 4%, the government obligation bonds, it was 6.8 was the AFR, so that was my bad. I looked it up and got the 6.8, and then today I'm like, that seems too high, so it was 4%. So if anybody was going to go look and check right now, it was 4, but it's still double. They were also talking about the historically low rates in the paper back then, as we are now, but it was just for then, now. So. Sorry, I couldn't correct that because I gave you bad information and I figured I didn't take it. That's okay.
Is there anybody else with questions on cards that they'd like me to grab?
Does anyone need additional cards to write their questions? Okay. So
So we've asked you to write one question per card, and if you have the number of the ballot question, that's helpful. It'll take us just a few minutes to sort this through, because we will group like questions together to ensure that as many questions as possible get answered. So we won't repeat the questions if it's exactly the same. Now, civility and respect are key to a successful evening of getting questions asked and answers given. Questions should be about the ballot questions and not personal attacks on board members or school staff or community members. And so if there are any questions that have that on, we will not read those. So, civility and respect. So we'll just take just a few minutes to get these sorted.
I don't have any more trivia questions to ask either, unfortunately.
I remember the 3 questions on the ballot back in the 90s. Anybody? Huh? Pool, auditorium, or school? My kid said, we're gonna get a pool. Oh, we don't need a pool here.
I still wish we would have gotten a pool. I remember that.
Yes, but that was just funny. That was what my kid thought today was like, why would we have a pool in here? Like, that was her thought.
I always thought that was a huge miss.
Do the ballots go to the school? Or
Yes,
to
yes.
school?
It's good to have the questions that we have. I appreciate your patience and getting these sorted.
Start us off.
Okay, we'll start. And what we'll do is ask the question, and then the most appropriate person will answer, or persons will answer. All right. So we'll start with some clarifying questions, basic information. Last night, Mr. Hokie said the Hoffman meeting would be on district website. When will that be there?
Sorry, that was my fault. I got busy today. I did not get it on. 100% my fault. Blame the tech guy.
So, tomorrow?
I'm very hopeful.
Very good.
If somebody wants it, I can personally email it to them if I don't get it up fast enough.
Okay, here's another clarifying question. Are the member of Zerberg, thank you, being compensated for being here tonight or for last year's failed referendum? So I think it's both are.
Talk a little bit about the.
Sure. We have a contract with Zerberg and also Crips Construction Services, and it's for a percentage amount of the entire project. That's how their fee is based. So for work that's done between the time of the contract with them and up until a successful referendum, we compensate them for travel, for time, for hours, for work that's done. And with the successful referendum, those dollars that we paid are taken off our fee for them. So yes, we're paying them right now. The successful referendum becomes part of that percentage that they agreed to work with for us. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yeah, it's a lump sum that's capped too, so, and we didn't, when the referendum failed last time, our commitment was to stick with this process through this next attempt, and so the dollars that are being spent now, as Mr. Hokie said, are going to be credited towards any fees as the project moves forward towards the schematic design portion of the project. So, and I want to say that the total is like $12,000 or something like that. The total for the entire
second part of that is a clarifying question. So I think you may have addressed this, but how much did the district spend on consultants, architects, lawyers, marketing materials that related to the last referendum? So there's a couple parts. One is the consultants, the architects, and it's lawyers, marketing materials, other that are related to the last referendum.
Well, when the question asks about marketing materials, we're not promoting I guess, vote on this. We're providing service to the community. It's information providing. So the term marketing, I think, extends beyond what we interpret marketing as. We have an obligation as a school district to inform our residents by public meetings, by brochures, by a PowerPoint presentation, and we're fortunate to have Zero Word and their staff to help us with providing that information.
I had the opportunity to attend MSBA, Minnesota School Board Association does an annual conference every single year, and going to those I found tremendously helpful. They oftentimes have sessions on referendum do's and don'ts and kind of the P's and Q's of providing information. So just as I started this session earlier, you'll hear I very selectively said you can vote yes to all three, you can vote no to all three, because at the end of the day, that's a taxpayer choice. Our responsibility as a school district is to get you the information that you need to make an informed decision.
Okay, here's another clarifying question. Has the district received approval from MDE to proceed as of yet?
At this time, we haven't received it. We submitted the documentation. There's a 60-day window in which MDE has to go through our review and comment. That 60-day window ends next week, so we're expecting to have that response from MDE probably Wednesday next week.
Okay, thank you. There are some questions that are related to the levy and taxes. What, if any, effect on the levy would new construction cost? What, if any, effect on the levy would new construction cost?
It's a good question. It's a question that came up last night. If you notice, like I'll use question 2 as an example, where it talks about the additions and enhancements to ag and shop space and the fitness center and things like that. That question specifically is to allow for additional space to run the current programs that we already have. So, if, for example, when we look at the ag and the shop space, the example that I like to use is you could do a large tractor restoration simultaneously with a large welding project like building a trailer and have the space to accommodate that with the additions. That doesn't require any additional teachers. That's not a change to the programming. Bonds, buildings, levy, operation, funding, and programming, but the bond that we're looking at and the enhancements that we're looking at to the structures don't change the programs that we have in place.
Okay, here's another question dealing with the levy. The levy expires next year. Will it be raised as indicated by Mr. Hoagie at the February board meeting?
The levy does not
The
expire.
levy doesn't expire next year. The levy expires 2 years from now. So when we look at that, there is an expectation that the board will go out for a renewal of the operating levy in November of 2022. Because what's typically done is that decision is made a year in advance. Because if you go for a renewal in 2022 and it fails, that means that the next year we don't have the revenue for that. So what needs to happen is we need time to adjust our budget to cut costs, because if it's not successful, we need to cut substantially from the budget. So then we would have an idea, and then also what it provides an opportunity to do is through the school board, the administrators, the superintendent, to go through programs to say, if this doesn't pass now in November of 2023, it puts us in a position that these are the cuts that we'll need to make to programming, to staffing, unless this operating levy passes it again. So it does, like Sarah said, it expires 2 years out, but it's customary that school districts go 1 year in advance to make sure that they have an opportunity to really clarify with community members what the true expense will be in programming and education.
And our recent history with levies is you can go out for a 10-year levy. our history in the past has not been to do that. We do 5 here, just because we think there's, you know, opportunity for things to go up or down over the years. But we've had the same, the last two times we went out have been the same amount. So at this point, you know, our standard practice is always to go out the year before it expires. So it gives us 2 opportunities to pass it. So that's common, and we wouldn't start talking about the levy until this coming spring. So.
Okay, thank you. I think there's some questions that are more related to curriculum. So the first one is, can you expand on what VOTEC or ag opportunities would be made available? Can you expand on what VOTEC ag opportunities would be made available?
Mr. Helge, you did a wonderful video and walked through all those spaces, so I think I'll defer to you.
Sure, well, when we look at the expansion of the shop area, as was illustrated earlier, it adds, I think it was 3,600 square feet to that. And right now what we have is we have 2 instructors sharing a shop space. So if you watch the video, we had a tractor back and forth that had been refurbished. There's another one sitting outside that's going to be done. There's an automobile hoist in there. If you put the tractor in to bring an automobile in for 2 separate classes, you've exhausted your space. And we're not in a position in Minnesota to do a lot of work outside. So what it provides us an opportunity to do is we can work on more projects simultaneously within that classroom. And the other thing that we're looking at is to expand with the use of Ben Johnson, who has an opportunity to expand the welding class, to expand the metals class. And he works primarily with that portion of our VOAG program. And Eric Swaski works primarily with the business aspect, and then run the aspect of our VOAG. So in our agricultural area here, we're really fortunate to have 2 individuals that, you know, very optimistic about the growth of their program. Their enrollment goes up, and they have an ag boosters group that is very active in the community. So as far as the specific classes that have been explored, that hasn't happened yet. If the building bond referendum does pass, before we get into that building, we're probably 2 or 2.5 school years out before we would be exploring those opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Now the next set of questions are more about the building details, okay? So here's the first question with kind of talking about building details. What happens when the one flex room is full and parents don't want to switch their children? Do class sizes go up? Say 2 grades need 3 rooms, or special ed needs another room. So what happens when one flex room is full and parents don't want to switch their children?
I don't know.
Do you want?
Well, I can address it a little bit. I mean, I think that it's a hard question to answer because I don't have a crystal ball. To be in a position like we were last year, as a board having discussions about what we do at the secondary school, because of being out of classroom space, wasn't anything that 10 years ago we would have anticipated discussing. So ultimately, and Mr. Hoagie, I would love for you to weigh in here, but as you build for what you need, the risk you run is that, yes, you might run out of classroom space. The excellent thing about how these buildings were built is that they were built with the intention of being able to add on, and so that's something that the board can always explore and discuss, but that is definitely one of those things that you visit it as it comes up.
So with that question, when we had proposed the one site, and Michelle mentioned earlier, we typically have 2 sections of 3rd grade at Elbow Lake and 2 sections of 3rd grade at South. If we're going to combine, most of the time in those classes, we'd be combining to 3 sections rather than 4. So that's what gave us the savings. And we still had enrollments that were still in that 20 students per classroom. So if we see substantial growth in the district at North or at South, we have room to absorb additional students in the classroom. Because when you look at our enrollment and you divide that by grades K through 5, we have 6 grade levels, and Brian addressed this last night. So we're looking at classrooms that have probably in the neighborhood of 16 to 18 students per classroom. If we have growth, if we're at an upper elementary level, 5th grade or 4th grade, it's not uncommon for those classes to have 23 to 25 students in the classroom. So we might have to shift some things around, but we can accommodate students for quite a period of time without any addition. And if we have have substantial growth in one of the buildings. Michelle talked about earlier, it's not always a popular thing to do, but you can shift that boundary and move kids from south to north or north to south, depending upon where the space is. And then the last thing that you do with the design for both buildings is you have those wings that go out for those elementary levels. Each one of those is constructed in a way in which you can add on another 2 rooms on the end of each wing to give you an additional classroom. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's relatively easy to expand. Would it cost you some money? Yes, but as the board and our staff members and our Zerberg representatives have talked about building for what we need currently and in the near future, opted to remove those flex rooms rather than building them now and having them perhaps sit empty for a long period of time.
Thank you.
Our district's come a long ways as far as class sizes go. And not to pick on you, Jared, but our class size was, I think, 32 in South, when you switched from South to North.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we had very large class sizes when I was in elementary school. So to see this intentional focus, and it hasn't been one administration, it's been multiple, and it hasn't been one school board, it's been multiple. But to see the shift even from when I was in school to what we have today for class sizes is pretty phenomenal.
Thank you. A question about, do the schools have to be ADA compliant by 2032? Do the schools have to be ADA compliant by 2032? Did I say that one right?
They have to be ADA compliant today. There's no date moving out into the future where schools have to be compliant. Unless you're talking about existing schools, there's rules for existing schools when you do remodeling as far as the money that's spent on an existing building and the portion of that money that needs to go towards improving accessibility. But the intent with any project like this, especially with an existing building that's going to be reconditioned like we're talking about with a portion of North Elementary, the intent is that the existing building would be entirely accessible, meeting all the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay, this question asks, are there possibilities for daycare facilities? Are there possibilities for daycare facilities?
We have areas programmed within both North and South for wraparound program. So those would be areas that would be used for students who come and enroll for half a day and they use half a day for daycare. At the South site that's not shown on the diagram as far as a wraparound program, a portion of the commons area through the discussion of staff and administrators made a determination that a portion of the commons area be used for the wraparound program in the South facility.
Okay, thank you. This is a question from Mr. Burke, and can you explain and defend your firm's recommendation for new construction at South? Can you explain and defend your firm's recommendation for new construction at South?
Sure. The decision that the board made to replace the South Elementary School is based on the condition of the building, number one. Number two, the site constraints that are there. That site is extremely small by elementary school standards that are set by the state of Minnesota. It's about 2.5 acres existing. It could possibly expand a little bit to maybe get up to 4 with some existing adjacent property if you were able to purchase that property. But the site that's being proposed at Hoffman is 12 acres. It's a site that's large enough to accommodate an elementary school and outdoor activity areas and be a very functional building. So the decisions to move away from the Kensington building came very early in the process. It came as part of the single site discussion. And so the evaluations that have been done both by us and by the previous people that worked on the project here, there's been a lot of eyes that have been on that building. The building has a lot of deficiencies. It has a lot of things that would need to be significantly improved if it was going to be improved, and the investment that you would put into that building would not be a financially responsible decision by the district. We've talked with the state about this, and the state benchmark is of 60% of the cost of new construction. If the cost of repairs exceeds 60% of the cost of new construction, the recommendation is always going to be to replace the building. and that's the decision that was made by the board here.
I want to be very clear for just a second that this is not a decision that's made by architects or engineers. No offense. We value and we appreciate the feedback and the data and the information, but it really was collectively and ultimately the board is charged with making that decision. And you had 7 individuals on the board that unanimously supported this decision. We all may have varying reasons for them. Some of the things that I look at are when you extensively renovate a building, at what expense is that? Programming, or increasing and improving technology, or having efficient spaces because you're trying to work within the means of what you have. Rather than being able to create truly ADA compliant or spaces that really meet the needs of our special ed population, classrooms that lend itself to self-seeing and collaboration so our teachers can do what they do best. So I just wanted to clarify that it's the board's decision at the end of the day. And we work with partners like engineers and architects and people that do audits and assessments, and we talk to the staff and we solicit feedback from the community, but it's the board's responsibility at the end of the day to present to you what you see that's on the ballots.
Okay, thank you. The next couple of questions are dealing with some of the sports piece of the questions. So first is a comment, and I think you can probably respond to the comment. It's not in a question form. I understand the need for a track, but not baseball and softball fields. Can you explain? I understand the need for a track, but not baseball and softball fields.
We've had, and if there are others that want to add additional information to this, but we have, with the enrollment increases that we've seen, we've also seen an increase, obviously, in extracurricular participation. So we have 3 baseball teams, 2 baseball fields. We have 3 softball teams, 2 softball fields. We have a really, we're very blessed to have some tremendous faculty within the district that believe in extracurricular activities, like the football program, the wrestling program, and we've seen growth in those programs all the way down to the 3rd grade as far as participation goes. So with programs that have grown to the extent that they've grown now, that wasn't anticipated 25 years ago. So my children, all having gone through the Mighty Hens program, practice in the green space that's behind the school without a dedicated place for their equipment to be stored for the field that they're going to practice on so that they can get game ready and gain all of those skills. So that's just a little bit, but I'm sure Mr. Hockey, you could certainly add to what I'm sharing.
Part of our discussion had to do with equity or equality with all sports, all extracurricular events, and we have 2 right now. The track and field team does not have an all-weather track that can be used on a regular basis in the spring. It's a low-lying area. It's an agri-lined track. It's supposed to be a substance that's porous to absorb water, but there are frequently times which is too wet to run on. Also, for field events, you don't have areas in which these athletes have an all-weather surface to run and to jump on. So what we're looking to do is to put a track and field complex out there for our individuals, boys and girls interested in track that's equivalent to what our wrestlers will get and our basketball players will get and our volleyball players will get. And Michelle mentioned the softball and baseball complex also. We don't have space for all those kids to be active at the same time. So when we look at this, the movement of the softball baseball fields to the top of the hill actually benefits the football program. Right now our football teams practice, our junior high kids practice behind the school building. They're separate from the varsity and JV and those areas, but they don't have a full-size practice field without being interrupted by the infields of our baseball fields. So we're looking at to convert that to all green space, which will actually have 3 practice fields, all green space, no agri-lime on there. So it would be a junior high field, a JV field, and a varsity field. So they'd be in the same area of the WCA complex.
I'll address.
Oh, yeah. Go back to the
Yeah.
I used to coach there, that's why I'm at.
Which slide?
We were talking about 3 fields all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so so this is the softball, this is the baseball. Yep. So the football, this is where the football practice fields are on top of the baseball fields now. So we would leave these would become the junior high for softball and baseball. These would become the practice fields, and then this is where the JV varsity fields would be.
Ever thought about using Newman Field as an extra field?
Within, going before, yeah, what we talked about,
Because it's a beautiful.
going back we've talked about going back and forth, but that provides the transportation issues, for getting kids to and from practices too. And which team's gonna practice there, and, you know, we've talked about using other places too.
Okay, the next question is.
Deb, I just want to address one thing. It wasn't specifically asked in there, but I know I've gotten a lot of questions in particular about the tennis court. So I just want to talk about that for a second. We do co-op tennis, and so our kiddos go out of the district, co-op Cape Morris for tennis. But our tennis fields have kind of sat there in flux for a few years with us trying to figure out what the plan is ultimately and how we're going to move forward. Question 2, which is the programming question at the secondary school, is where you'll also see that we'd like to allocate funds to bring the tennis courts back up to use, and also incorporate things like pickleball. Right now, because we co-op tennis, it's primarily used for physical education, so it made the most sense to wrap that into question 2. However, with bringing the tennis fields back up to a place where they can be used, and with the growth that we've seen in our tennis program, we very well could see our tennis kiddos come back to us at some point and not need to go out of the district. So, just wanted to cover that.
Is the next question is the ball field complex land on a signed purchase agreement?
Yes, it is.
So the purchase agreement is contingent upon a successful bond vote that approves that question for then us to move forward.
The next question is related again to the building details. Are athletic facilities used for Phi Ed? Are the athletic facilities used for Phi Ed?
I did address that a little bit with like the tennis court.
I don't know that our Phi Ed class goes down to the track and field area currently, the football field. They do go outside and they use the ball fields for physical education. They do not use the tennis courts for tennis. They do some other activities out there, but they're not used for tennis.
There are, I mean, the football field down there, if you've been down there, it does, when we get heavy rain, it does acquire water in certain places. So, you know, I myself remember back to running the mile in high school, and we did that around the parking lot because you don't accumulate water there. You add a track down to the football field, and I think there's certainly some additional opportunities for Phi Ed to use some of those spaces.
It depends on the weather, is what she's saying, just like it did when we were in high school.
And the track, I anticipate being used more than just for the track team. I know cross-country runs down there,
Yeah, they
but
do.
they'll run down there.
That's,
It'll be used for track. I envision the marching band possibly using it. I envision it being an area where spectators can stand and go to a lot of football fields that have the track, and the fans are right there closer. Anybody knows me, the more you can bring a home field advantage to your place, the better off you're going to be. But the track will get used for way more than just track.
Thank you.
And another thing on the track thing and the tennis courts, those are two that have competitive sports that we have that do not ever have a home game. They're always away. Our tennis team, we had tennis teams that were going to state nonstop when I first moved here. They never have a home one. For a while there was a home one. They came to Elbow Lake for a little while there. And the track never had a home one. And without a track, we can't. There's a lot of other schools our size that have pole vault teams. Without our track, we can't even have a pole vault.
Thank you. Okay, the next questions are about student population, and they're dealing with lots of students, if the South students would leave. So how many kids are at South this year? I was told 125 at the district office. The last night board member said 154. So just clarifying, how many students are at South this year?
I believe that 125 might be a K-4 number, so the number I have includes both pre-K and, I have to look it up.
remember, usually isn't it a K, I don't know what, when you're asking enrollment numbers.
They usually ask enrollment numbers of K
K.
through 4, K through 5, and the pre-K program isn't always included in those numbers because oftentimes that program is a half-day program.
Yeah, so at South, right now, we have 158 pre-K through 4.
Can you repeat that again, sir? How many?
158 pre-K through 4.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question then. Has the district taken into account the number of students it will lose from the south end of the district as a result of retracting its footprint by moving south to Hoffman? So has the district taken into account the number of students it will lose from the south end of the district as a result of retracting its footprint by moving south to Hoffman?
So being from the south end myself, I mean, one of the reoccurring themes in talking with parents was accessibility to kids, particularly that are quite young. So it's, you know, whether it's your first or it's your third kid, when you've got a 3-year-old that's going to a pre-K program and you are 20-some miles away from them, that's a bit scary for a mom. And so, and there was, it's interesting because I had quite a few conversations saying, you know, what's that safe distance? Where is the safe proximity to your child that gives you some reassurance? And even when we looked at the map and looking at Hoffman's proximity to Glenwood, to Alexandria, to Morris, I mean, it's pretty centrally located. And it has easy access, particularly on the south side, to where a lot of our parents are leaving during the day to go work, so.
You didn't answer the question.
Can you clarify the question for me? I just think the only point we have, people have brought this question up before, and you can take an informal survey and you can ask everybody at South, are you still going to go to South if you move to school? What are they going to answer, and is that information going to be accurate? It's no different than we joined back in, whatever the year in 90 we joined. They said we're going to lose students. Did we? Yep, we did. We lost them on each end. I mean, it's a question you cannot answer, and I think that's the struggle is, we also don't know how many new kids are going to come into our district. So it's one of those things where we have no way to determine how many kids we could lose. If someone wants this bond to pass, they're gonna say it's fine. If somebody doesn't want to because they have a preference to keep Kensington there, they're gonna say no because that's what they want us to think. So I guess at this point we've had this conversation, but there really is no way to get that information. Just like there's no way to find out how many people will come to our district because we have new and improved buildings. So I don't know if that's the answer, but we don't have another answer.
Michelle kind of addressed this a little bit previously and talked about the location of the Hoffman site as the choice. In addition to the population, there's other things that have happened in the Hoffman community since 1995. Hoffman has the highest percentage increase of property valuation. It has the highest percentage increase of population, and it has the highest percentage increase of commercial properties. So when we looked at where's the best site, we looked at population, but then we also looked at the community dynamics and what community has shown the most potential for growth, and that gets to be Hoffman. So without the school, they were outshining you know, the other communities in the district. So when we think about constructing a facility that's going to serve the district, you know, like our current building was built in 1995, so we're 25 years in, and we see it to go for the foreseeable future. You want to place that building in a location that's going to enjoy an opportunity for growth, and that was Hoffman. And by improving the facility here in Elbow Lake, we see great potential for growth here as well, because new attracts, and there's no question about it. When facilities are upgraded, it causes people to take a look and they like the new. So, you know, if we recognize that there might be some people on the fringe that may decide that another school district is a better opportunity for them because of distance, if they make that choice, we honestly believe that they'll be offset by growth in our other communities.
I mean, ultimately, it's an individual decision for each and every family. Each and every family has different criteria for determining, ultimately, what school district they're going to enroll their kids in. And I will honestly say that the hardest part of being an elected official is not just looking at what's best for one town, but we have 5 within our community. And so when I look at the data, and I look at the facts, and I look at the statistics, and I look at where our population is located, I realize that there is absolutely no decision that I can make that's going to satisfy 100% of the people. All I can do is hope that we've made the right decision based off of the information and the research and the exploring and the open discussions that we've had for quite some time.
The next set of questions has to deal if the first question passes, what will happen to the building and the land in Kensington?
Yep. So, and this is a question that came up last night also. One of the other reoccurring themes from multiple conversations with community members was, please don't leave a building in a town for the town to deal with without having a plan for it. And so in looking at that space, it's right in the middle of Kensington, and that community did some great work with helping out with the playground and getting the playground project done. So the vision there, and it's been built into the budget, is to demolish that building and create a really nice green space within the middle of town.
There's kind of a follow-up question to that. It says, is the district willing to sell or donate the south building since it is of no value to the district and would save the abatement costs?
We haven't had that discussion, or we had a group that's asked us about that.
This is another question, and it's still with the Kensington School, but then it's also talking about the Agnes Linney School here at that portion. Is there any means to repurpose the old Kensington School and or the Agnes Linney part of the North Elementary School?
Do you want to talk a little bit about the research we've done here?
As far as any work to be done in Kensington, we haven't gone that direction because it doesn't fit our needs. It takes us further away from our location up, and we already deal with multiple sites for too many activities. And as far as the location here at North, if I understand the question right, was there any discussion about utilizing the wing to the west? And no, because we're taking up playground to the east side of instructional area. What we're looking for on the west side is we're moving, we have an existing playground that will stay right where it is. We have a preschool playground that's out behind the building. We relocate that to a similar area. And in the area where the building sits right now, we make that green space for students for soccer, for football, and then also the basketball tennis courts that sit back to the side, they'll be moved to that direction also, because where the tennis courts and the basketball court sits right now, that will become parking lot and bus drop-off and parent drop-off, or volleyball. So what happens now is that all that playground area gets to be on one side of the building. And for supervision, we don't have to have people watching the playground here, watching the volleyball and basketball, watching the area where they'll be playing football. It's all in one location. So it becomes a very good playground area for us.
Or basically it'll just be a flip, is basically what's happening, and then all the playgrounds will be in the same area with the green space.
There's a lot of advantages, like Mr. Rowley said about the vision. I'm usually loud enough. But there's a lot of advantages with the design here as far as the vision of staff, being able to see the playground, being able to see the green space, being able to see the bus drop-off, being able to see the pre-K space. There's advantages to our physical education staff that can come out, and right now, if the gym teacher goes out in the green space, it can't be anywhere near the tennis court, it can't be anywhere near the playground. With this design, it gives both a lot of advantages, both during school, after school, and in the summer months for other summer programs.
Thank you, Darren.
Okay, and then this is a question kind of on postponing. What is the material and financial cost of postponing construction?
Brian? Oh, Steve, why don't I have you take that one?
You came all this way.
Yeah.
Let's give you the mic.
Typically, today's construction market is very interesting. I've been doing this for just about 40 years, and it's interesting. It's important to catch the market at the right time. People are getting ready to get their season started, which is typically in the spring. But we generally have figured roughly 4% inflationary cost per construction season. So I think that answers the question. So 4% per year, the cost would expect to increase.
you.
This wasn't part of that question, but another part of that cost of delaying is the work that needs to be done in our two facilities. So there are things that are just waiting for us to have to address, whether it's a boiler situation, whether it's other structural needs. Those are things that we know need to be done in the very near future. When the prior firm did the evaluation of the building, they identified multiple areas of both north and south that are well beyond their anticipated lifetime. And some of these are identified as urgent items that need to be taken care of in the very near future. So not only is it the cost for the project, but it's the investment of money that will take us to improve some of the facilities as they stand right now in the interim before something is done.
Okay, now there are some questions about the voting process. So if someone does not get a ballot, who should they contact? If someone does not get a ballot, who should they contact?
They don't get a ballot, they contact Chrissy Oakes at the district office, and that's the individual that would be able to assist them with getting that ballot. The best thing that a person could do is to go to the state website. They can check on that website. It's very easy. You enter in your name, your location, and it will tell you if you're registered. And if you're on the state database for registration for elections, you'll have your ballot mailed to you.
And where can people find that information that you mentioned, that state site?
Let me get back to that last slide for you.
And all this is also on the website, school website too.
It is right here. It's Secretary of State, Minnesota U.S. Elections is where it is. It's, I'm pretty sure it's in the brochure. It's also on our school district website.
Thank you.
So the person that asked that question in the brochure, I think it's in one of the last 2 pages.
So what is the mail-in ballot process? So who facilitates, who judges, who handles the ballots? So and what's the whole process?
Okay, the whole process takes place with the assistance of our county auditor, Grant County, and assistance from the Secretary of State's office. We have an individual working in our building, Chrissy Oakes, my administrative assistant, so she's working the facilitation of getting all those ballots prepared to mail. So there is the ballot instructions, return envelope, and those are the documents that be mailed out based upon the list from the address list from the Secretary of State's office. So we are managing that. And next Wednesday at our school board meeting, the board will approve the election judges, and those will be the people that will be tabulating the ballots and entering them into the voting machine for finding the results.
Sarah, I have it open to information about the mail-in ballot process. Do you know what page number that says? The last page. So, and if you haven't seen this brochure, there's extra cues tonight that you can pick up and take with you if you haven't gotten it for some reason. Kevin, thank you, is waving them over his head. So you pick those up, and it has the information that we presented tonight, but beyond that, some additional information that's helpful.
And then someone asked, can I drop my ballot off at the school?
Yes, you can. You can drop it off, not at the school, not at North or South, but you can take it to the district office in Barrett. And then when it's dropped off, Chrissy Oakes will go through the process of recording that ballot's been dropped off, and she'll place it in a secure location, and it'll be opened by the judges on the night of the election.
Okay. And then this question is not specific to the referendum right now, but it was asked, so I'll present it to you. What are the containers for at South? Is it to declutter per the fire marshal's orders? So what are the containers for at South?
There was, and I commend the staff there, they've played Tetris with that building. And I mean, even down to, we were talking about, that's some staff that are like, yep. When you think about 3rd and 4th grade programming, so kind of back to when people ask enrollment questions, a lot of times they think about K through 5, but we have taken 2 other classrooms to add on preschool programming, and that's at both schools. And then having to make some office space for maintenance staff and storage storage and all of the above. So the storage containers that are at South are, yes, storage containers that house some of the items that we're needing home.
Thank you. So I just want to ask a question. If people want to go to, where do they find the information on the referendum on the school website?
If you go to the school website and you go under the tab that's referendum on the top of that page, it'll take you to all that election information.
I think it's helpful just to know where that is, because there's a wealth of information there for people. As far as their tax impact, questions, more information, videos.
Yep.
Deb, I have a quick question while we wait. What is the district office hours?
District office hours would be from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m.
Okay, and when are we expecting to get these flyers in the mail? I still haven't gotten mine.
Okay, I began investigating that today, so they were printed by Night Printing in Fargo, and they were sent to each of our 5 post offices within our community. And when I went to one post office today, they claimed that they didn't get them until last week. Initially said they didn't get them until this week, so there's some reason for the delay of the shipment from the printer to the post office. So we're working on that process. I talked not only with the person working in the post office at Hoffman, but also I talked to the postmaster of the station in Morris. So the next thing that the postmaster in Morris will do is they'll find out from Night Printing when those ballots or not the ballots, the informational brochures were mailed, and it would be my understanding that they're able to track when they would arrive at these locations.
I was just gonna say, I know when we mail things, like here in Elbow Lake and Wendell, goes all the way to Fargo.
They weren't mailed, they were dropped off, they were like the whole
Right, but in
package.
Fargo typically, so Fargo can ship directly to
We
here.
have to go to state.
But then, from there in the south, they have to go to all the St. Cloud, and then back. So it goes Fargo to St. Cloud, back up here from Barrett in the south.
And the shipping date that I saw from Night Printing was 9/21, so that would have been last Tuesday is when they left Fargo.
And if it's a bulk mailing, they tend to take longer because they're not, unless you're saying in first class.
No, it's the box, it's the box of brochures, like, to be put in the mailboxes that we're looking for.
So the Night Printing ships a box or boxes with a destination of Barrett or Hoffman or Elbow Lake, and the boxes arrive, they're open, and they divide or they designate within that box whether it's a box holder or a roll route number. So when they arrive at the post office, they should have a very seamless operation, just taking that document and putting it into the right carrier or put it in the mailbox.
If people want that, if they haven't received that yet, there are copies here right now.
Yep, and I'm just gonna show you, so this is the tab you go to for any building bond referendum information, so you click on this tab here, and it's gonna do something hopefully. So it's gonna start, here's the flyer, this is a version of the flyer in electronic format, so you can go right there and look at the flyer and that. And then it's gonna have our informational video, which if you have not watched yet, I would encourage you to watch it. And then it also has, if you don't want to watch the whole 37-minute video and you have specific questions, it's broke down into some smaller groups. So we have question 1, question 2, question 3 on there. And then if you keep going down to the bottom, there's also going to be some more information. So it's going to have all the press releases that have been in the paper. It's going to have the notice of special election, the mail-in ballot process. Everything's in here that you need. So it's pretty easy to find, like I said. Top to bottom, that's your order of importance that you want to go through.
Since you're on that page, Sarah, can you point out, so if you wanted to enter your home value?
Oh, yeah, so that's, sorry, if you could, there's a link on here, and I don't know how to make it work in here. Evan.
That's okay. But directly above that bottom section on the page that Sarah was just talking about, if you wanted to see for your home, what the tax impact was gonna look like, or for your land, what the tax impact was gonna look like. You can use this link on the website, or you can navigate to it directly by doing a Google search.
Yeah, you click on that link and it will work on your computer, I just don't know how to make it work.
Or copy and paste.
Okay, the last thing is just a comment, and just a thank you to all the presenters, thank you for all these facts. So,
Thank you. So as we finish up tonight, as I said, if you think of a question as you leave tonight, you can certainly come to one of the other community meetings, or you can email questions at isd2342.org, and we'll get you an answer to that. Thank you very much for coming, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you for attending, and also thank you, Neil and Deb, appreciate your help.